Very warm greetings to everyone. Greetings from the Faculty of Philosophy in Sarajevo, from the University of Sarajevo. Let me just share my screen with my presentation. Once again, my name is Larisa Kasumagić, and I speak on behalf of the University of Sarajevo, and in particular connection to the center that we started last year. And the theme and the focus of my presentation will be to sort of wrap up the concepts and ideas that we have presented since the beginning of day one of our Summer School of Peace Pedagogy, and also to discuss briefly some of the plans and ideas that we have developed as a part of this educational center. This is our logo. We have a two-language approach to representing our center, because within the program of the center, we value very much a multilingual and multicultural approach to understanding peace and to understanding cultural aspects of education. Again, something of a reminder that I briefly mentioned in my opening, welcoming everyone for the day one of our program. So two important dates that we will try to cherish and carry on in many years to come, hopefully. One related to marking and commemorating and creating, actually, designating the day for peace education. The initiative that I mentioned, which was just established as a part of the United Nations initiative, with this particular goal: to assemble a global network of peace educators and to establish a United Nations Peace Education Day, which recognizes that peace building skills, strategies, and structures are foundational to all other humanitarian endeavors. I chose this quote because it very much coincides with the mission and the values and the goals that we have developed for our Educational Center for Peace. And the other important day, which is tomorrow, International Peace Day. And I also just provided a sort of a reminder how it all started back in 1981, when the International Day of Peace was established by the United Nations General Assembly. And then 2 decades later, in 2001, the General Assembly unanimously voted to designate the day as a period of nonviolence and ceasefire. And why I chose these 2 days to discuss in the framework, within the framework of our Peace Education Center is for the reason that we have decided to designate the whole week at the Faculty of Philosophy, which we have entitled the Peace Week, to organize different activities, different projects, and to make them publicly visible within the institution of higher education that is connected to teaching about peace and teaching for peace, that we put as one of the foundational stones for our Peace Education Hub. Let me tell you just briefly a few words about the background story of how we started our Peace Education Hub initiative at the University of Sarajevo. It all started back in 2018 when we have joined. Since then, we are still members of this international research network. We joined a larger international network of different universities, and those universities were from UK, University of Sussex, University of Kigali in Rwanda, University of Los Andes in Colombia, and University of Sarajevo, Bosnia. So with these 4 major universities, we have established the research network with some of these goals. And I just selected out some of the key points of the research network initiative that we have built. One of the main goals was to discuss and reflect as a part of this intellectual, academic, but also practitioners network, to discuss and reflect on how we might develop a culture of peace building with our students through educational initiatives and collaborative research in peace building pedagogies. So the great emphasis was put on creating these safe spaces and brave spaces to work with students in each of our universities to promote and to develop culture of peace building. The second goal was to work on educating students and teachers on how to work for peace and nonviolence in their classrooms and in their schools and in education in general. And this was with a particular sort of idea, not just as researchers, but also with this sort of idea to act upon something that we thought was important and critical in each of our communities, in each of these countries, in each of these universities, to change something that changed almost the paradigm of education, to change the approach we address issues that are visible and present in the community, but are not discussed and are not sort of integrated and are not visible as something to be tackled within our everyday teacher practices. We had these ideas to work on peace and nonviolence in particular in connection to classrooms, which is why we developed peace pedagogy approach of understanding and really differentiated between peace education and peace pedagogy by trying to think more closely and trying to bring in those practices of good examples, to exemplify good examples of peace pedagogy, which is basically how we teach peace. So how we bring in these specific frameworks, strategies, methods, and some of you mentioned in the very beginning that this is something that they would like to see happen in our summer school. I can reassure you that this is one of the most important goals, not just for the Peace Hub, but also for this summer school, to sort of try to role model through the workshops that you will be able to participate in the coming days, and also to discuss the sort of framed and within some major principles that are foundational stones for understanding how peace education is actually operationalized and implemented within each of these subjects. So we mentioned technical sciences, mathematics. We have teachers of mathematics, so natural sciences on one hand, but we also have teachers of humanities and social sciences on the other hand, as well as the practitioners. So building the network and thinking in terms of changing the paradigm of using each of these platforms of subjects to teach in a different way and to promote certain set of values was also one of the very important goals that we had as a part of our research network. And lastly, to develop peace hubs of academics from our different countries and regions. So this was one of the goals from the very start of this international research group, that we have sort of envisioned 3 years back, that we have envisioned for each of our university communities. And this is how we developed some of the main lessons and presented in the research that Michela was also referring to, some of the main findings that are summarized here in this graph, in this sort of a mind map that visually represents different areas of how we developed peace pedagogical framework in connection to discussing the role of university. So you can see here how this particular point of our research discussing the importance of engaging universities in a more critical analysis and in a more civic, I would say, responsibility and civic role ascribed to universities to discuss the elements, for example, in connection to teacher training, formal education that we have all been involved in, those of us who work in this center, that are engaged in this center. So how we use our positions within the higher education in connection to teacher training to promote some of these values. And you also see other elements of in connection to the role of university, for example, teacher training in connection to adult education. So how we, for example, empower teachers to be those social change agents in their classrooms, in their communities, in their schools, by trying to understand some pedagogical principles and philosophies that underpin these sorts of approaches to adult education. But also many other elements like professional ethics, community engagement, celebration of diversity, promotion of citizenship through knowledge, skills, and attitudes. I would also add values. So this is on one hand, some of the elements that we have discussed and developed as a part of the research. And on the other hand, you have here different subject areas within the curriculum arena, from arts and culture, citizenship building, peace building, ethics, civic education, and many other fields. Natural sciences are not represented here, but they should definitely be also integrated in this representation, in this area of different subjects in connection to curriculum arena where peace building and learning peace building could be incorporated. You also see the cross-curricular themes of diversity, equality of opportunity, professional ethics, values, the hidden curriculum, for example, that we have discussed as a part of this research group and also integrated into our workshops, lectures, and topics. When it comes to curriculum focus, so when it comes to thematic approach to developing certain themes that could be connected to specific areas, subject areas, or the roles of universities or teaching approaches, we identified some of these topics, for example, issues of sameness and differences, where, for example, the issues of identity also could be related to, or the themes of rights and responsibilities, democratic principles, democracy, the discussions around democracy, patterns of history, legislation, security, personal experience and reflection. So what is represented here by these specific elements of themes, you will find in our specific workshops in the coming days that we hope you will be able to relate to and maybe identify as points of intersection with your own experiences in a classroom. And of course, teaching approaches from action research methodologies, experiential and applied learning, to different formats of using dialogue, debate, professional ethics for every discipline. So using ethics in each of these subjects as a very important principle in peace education. So what we use the science for. Do we use it as a destructive force? For example, in technical sciences, to destroy something, to destruct something, or we use it with a goal in mind that is geared towards building something, recreating something, healing something. So these are just some of the examples. And we also, as a part of this research, we also try to better understand peace building pedagogies at a university level, within the university setting, from specific modules that we are also trying to develop as a part of methodology for Peace Education Hub. So here you see the topics of civic engagement, moral education, peace building, citizenship. I can add language education, intercultural learning, so many other topics that you can relate to in your own field of study. So from these specific modules, from the way we use memory and narratives and arts and history, but also affective domains of learning, how these are replicated and how these are used and implemented within the educational context, because we know that emotional aspect is also very important in discussing in particular sensitive topics and difficult topics that could trigger some traumatic memories and that can still represent some traumatic experience for our students, but also for the teachers themselves. And then you just go up the ladder from discussing the role of reflection, reflective practice, the use of dialogue, cross-disciplinary analysis, all the way up to the whole institutional approach, which is democratic and inclusive. So if we speak of a classroom as a starting point, if you want to discuss the modules at this particular level, how we use these modules in our classrooms. So this is the authorities, these are the positions of power, if you want, that we keep within the classroom setting. So how we design the lesson, what we choose to be discussed, how we connect that to problems and the issues that are around us, and how we act upon some of these issues, all the way up to the role and responsibilities that are posed at the level of the institutional framework that need to be in accordance with the principles of peace learning and peace building, which means that they're inclusive, that they're democratic, and that they are participatory. And so with this little short background of the research that we have developed for 2 years, and all of my colleagues who are in a coordinating team together with myself, including Leila Mulalic from the Department of English, Emina Dedic Bukvic from the Department of Education, and Melissa Foric-Plasto from the Department of History, we all participated in different formats of exchange with these universities in the past, since 2018, in the past few years. And then back in 2019, starting 2020, right before the outbreak of COVID, we started our Peace Education Hub, and we got the official approval by the committee here at the university to start this institutionally, to frame this peace pedagogy and peace education as an institutional framework within the institution of the Faculty of Philosophy. And here you see a brief representation of how we do that in our center. So we value the interdisciplinarity of combining different fields of study, different disciplines, but also complementing each other's discipline with the knowledge and skills from those of the other that come from the other field. So we value very much this interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approach in the center, which is why we also combine different forms of knowledge with different disciplines and different expertise and experiences of the people who are involved in the center. With whom we work at the Peace Education Hub. Here I put some of the community organizations. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. With practitioners, so valuing the reach out of the university by reaching out to the community and to the problems that are visible and that are tangible and that are present in our community life is also an important aspect of our hub. We try to reach out to other universities, and I put here a sister organization from the University of Kigali, Rwanda, with whom we are closely collaborating on supporting their own concept and idea to launch Peace Education Hub within their own institution. And we are also opening in this research and in collaboration to other institutions as well, by partnering with academic partners within the regional network of universities, students, and professors, regionally, but also locally and internationally. And what we do here at the Peace Hub, we develop different sorts of collaborative projects, research projects, international projects by promoting the culture of peace and teaching through, for, and about peace. What are some of the envisioned activities? The topic of my presentation, with this ultimate goal to present the importance of, I like to call this the learning community, building the network of learning community of university, primary, secondary schools, private schools, so schools of any type, with the community as well, so working with community partners and trying to see how we can complement each other's work and each other's professional activities to meet some of these locally and globally set goals and envisioned activities. So I just highlighted some of the keywords here that would represent our local engagement on one hand and our global engagement and activism on the other hand. So locally, what we would like to see and what we would like to do is actually to work on education and training of a small group of students, teachers, and community members, which is what we are doing as a part of this summer school, in peace building and nonviolence, and also with the goal to have an access to community partners, but also to actively collaborate with community partners. Locally, we would also like to develop and nurture the culture of peace by teaching about and for peace. So not just to teach about peace, but to teach how to act upon certain incidents of violence and certain incidents of social injustices, if you want, that are present within the school, but also within a larger community, in their specific areas of expertise, and to contribute to professional development of teachers. So we want to work with teachers who are practicing teachers, so teachers like yourselves who signed up for this program. So those who have gained certain experience and are open-minded to integrating and recognizing the potential of your subjects to connect your teaching to different ideas, goals, and visions of peace education, which you have also identified in these introductory rounds, a lot of you in different subjects, but also for the pre-service education of teachers, because we work at the university, we work at the teacher education program, and this is our second ultimate goal, to affect the policies and to affect the practices of how these could be implemented and integrated into the official curriculum of teacher training and teacher education. And globally, to work to focus on research that would tackle societal, community, conflict and peace building issues. So research is also a key component of our center. So we want to base a lot of the activities that we initiate and that we develop on something that is research-based, evidence-based. So we value this research approach very much in our strategy and in our strategic development, but also building partnerships. So we like to work with partnerships with local civil society organizations, but also strengthening the connections with other universities, with other peace centers, with other teachers' institutes and different education programs. So that we all work together on the issues of peace and nonviolence in education and teacher training nationally, regionally, and internationally. So the coordinating team here, this is a sort of a summary. So this is how we overlap in our disciplines and in our expertise. So you see here that we all bring into our team specific areas of professional expertise. So here you see an array of different aspects of our work in connection to who we work with, from community partners. So we have Forum ZFD. We are discussing formalizing the partnership with Euroclio, but we have representatives of Euroclio in the work, and we do some collaborative projects. We have regional partners, and we have international partners, out of which I'd like to select out Facing History and ourselves. We are also aiming for integrating and developing our methodology that is to a large extent based on a rich and very extensive experience of this educational foundation from the United States, but also University of San Francisco. Our keynote lecture will be related to teaching controversial issue, as a result of our collaboration with the University of San Francisco, Professor Judy Pace. Center for Peace and Nonviolence, we did some activities with that for the Kingian philosophy of nonviolence. And Institute Georg Eckert, we are proud also to have Sarah Clark Habibi, who is a researcher with this particular institute. And you also see in connection to international projects, Leiden University, for example, with whom we have just started the collaborative project on the role of the history and the rule of law in education and peace building. And some of our center members have also participated in some of these projects. For the current year, Project 2021, we are focusing, you see here, the larger sort of a circle here is our summer school. So this is really at the heart of our attention at the very moment. So Summer School of Peace Pedagogy 2021 as a first step in trying to institutionalize the framework of educating teachers and working on professional development of teachers in this field, which is an intercultural but also a multilingual framework for teaching about these topics. We have series of webinars. You can learn about that on our website that are connected with the topics that are related to nonviolence teaching, teaching controversial issues, drama-based pedagogy in connection to peace, learning, and teacher development and reflective teaching. And we also very much focus on research on teacher education programs that I have mentioned just briefly.